The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Good day, all. My name is Kenny Hendrix, and welcome to a new radio program here on the Black Talk Radio. This is a new program called Change Matters Solutions. Again, my name is Kenny Hendrix.
And I am Collette Williams, and greetings, and thank you for being with us. Thank you for chiming in. This, as Ken said, is a new radio or new talk show. And we hope that we can get you involved in the things that matter most, not only to the black community, but to society as a whole. Change matters, the importance of change, the importance of solutions, and the importance of us knowing the direction that we're taking and where we've come from.
We are going to be talking about things that affect the black community, whether it's policing in our community, whether it's finances, education, how our young people are doing. We're going to be discussing all of those topics. In addition to that, we will discuss our ideas for solutions to these issues. There are a lot of issues that do plague our community, and we need to start talking about how we resolve them. For example, in black policing, how police the black community. We talk to our kids about how to interact with the police and how to deal with those situations, how to deal with it when something goes wrong. But we'd also like to talk about, as a whole, how do we change the dynamic of policing in the black community? In other words, looking for solutions to the war, not just each individual battle. So we will be discussing those things, and we hope you enjoy that.
And not only will we be talking about policing, but we also want everyone to know and to understand that we're going to have police in the community. There's no question about it. But it's really incumbent upon us to take a position that we cannot buck the system. We can make a decision that we're going to get past the issues that do plague our community, and what can we do ourselves to make sure that the outcome of any situation is in our benefit. So those of us who have youngsters and who are driving, who do go out on their own, how should they behave? And we want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to know how that affects you, because it does affect all of us. It's not just relegated to one individual or one community. It's all over the country. So the things that we will talk about, as Ken said, are those things such as policing in our community. We are going to discuss education. I am in education, and what I see in education, not only do we need to discuss it, but that is a major issue, and that's where things always begin, things such as the direction that young people take in their lives, the direction and how they think, where they're going to go, the schools that they go to, how they treat people, how they treat themselves, the lack of respect, which is just enormous. And I'm sure all of you would agree, the lack of respect is huge. It's paramount, and something has to be done about it. So those are a couple of, go ahead.
I say we do have an email address, changematters99@gmail.com. Again, that's changematters99@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your ideas for topics on the program. We'd love to hear your ideas for solutions. So drop us a line and tell us what you think. Some of the other things we're going to be talking about are things, financial things in our community. For example, credit. How do we use our credit? How do we fix our credit? How do we develop our credit to make sure that when we have opportunities to make purchases, that we've got the resources to do that? One of the issues that we have in our community is the lack of credit, is the lack of being able to have the financial resources to own the businesses in our community, so that we don't have outsiders coming in, making all the money, and all we are doing is spending. We are
taking it back to their communities, or sending it out of our communities. And remember, in the black community, our dollar goes around one time, if that. And in other communities, the dollar goes around 26 times, 28 times, 30 times. And it stays in that community. They trade within their own community. They make sure that each one teaches one. They make sure that that dollar stays in that community. They want you to come in and spend your money, but they will not go to your community and spend their dollars in your community. And we also want to address the fact that in the black community, what kind of businesses are there? For sure, liquor stores. For sure, churches. But do we have anything else? For sure, beauty supplies. They're beauty supplies, but they're not run by black folks. They're not run by black folks, especially in the Los Angeles region, Southern California region. They are not run by black folks. And where there are black folks, you can be sure that there is, can I use the word, an invasion? And we move over and let everybody else move in, but they don't move and let us move in. So there are a lot of things that we're going to talk about. And as Kim said, we're talking about the issues that plague our community. How can we come up? How, at this point, in 2016, going into 2017, how can we create solutions? How can we have results? What are the outcomes of the things that we know are plaguing our community? We don't want to just complain and not do anything about it, but we do have complaints, and these are the solutions for those complaints. When it comes to community, when it comes to relationships, we've got a lot of discussion about black men versus black women and vice versa. We got to talk about it. It's time for us to talk about it. It's time for us to do something about it, not simply talk about it. You got to walk the walk if you're going to talk the talk, and it's time.
I'm going to date myself here. If we look back to the late 60s and through the 70s, Dr. Maulana Karenga developed the Kwanzaa concept. Everyone is probably familiar with Kwanzaa, but they may not be familiar with the background of Kwanzaa. And one of the things about Kwanzaa that really strikes me, and has always struck me, even as a young person it did, was Kujichagulia, the self-determination, which reaffirms our right, everyone's right, to control our destiny and our lives. And that is one of the things that's been missing in our community, is we have not had the self-determination to have the control over our community. And I think a lot of people in our community are waiting on permission to have that control.
Absolutely.
Anytime we want to, we can take control of our community. We actually just get up and do it. So we don't need to wait for permission. We need to get it done. We need to work together. We need to frequent our black businesses. This is nothing against the other races, the Asians, the other people that come into our community, because if they weren't there, we would have nowhere to shop. So somebody's got to do it. But that somebody needs to be us in our community.
And there's no reason why we can't do it.
Yeah, and we need to have that self-determination that says, okay, we're going to do this. And people will give you reasons why they can't, and what we need to talk about is the reasons why we can. And we can. And again, getting back to what I was saying before, is sometimes I know a lot of times black people have problems getting credit, getting mortgages and things like that. And, you know, there's going to be obstacles. And that's the thing about this life, is there are going to be obstacles no matter who you are. Yes, some people have fewer obstacles, but it's 90%, it's 10% the obstacle and 90% of how you deal with that obstacle. there are four ways to deal with it. Do you want to go over it? Do you want to go around it? Do you want to go under it or through it? Your fifth option is just to stop and throw your hands up and say, I'm not going to do anything. We have to stop doing that. When we run into obstacles, we need to figure out a way to get past them.
And we can't say, I can't. We can't say, I can't. And we can't say, they won't let me. Those words can always be uttered, but those are empty words because determination, self-determination has to be the road, that has to be the avenue, that has to be the journey. So self-determination, you cannot be muted unless you allow someone to mute your self-determination. Then you ask yourself, why? Why would you allow yourself to be defeated in any shape, form, or fashion? So self-determination, that, as Ken said, we're dating ourselves. But back then, when that was a slogan or that was those words that were used, those words meant something. And they should mean something today. Just because this is the age of technology should not mean that we come away from those things that meant the most, those things that gave us the determination to continue on. And I am a firm believer, and I know that you are also, Ken, integration didn't work for us. We thought integration meant for us to sit down and assimilate. That's not what integration was for. It took our voice away. It took our voice away. It muted our voice, our self-determination, the things that meant the most to the black community. No longer. And remember, when we came up with people who were determined, people who knew what it meant to rise up and clench your fist. They knew what black power meant. And it wasn't that it was violent. It was about the power of the people. And that was the other slogan, power of the people, power to the people. And those are the things that's how we lived. That was our creed. That was our journey. That was our destiny. Our destiny now has been clouded because we're now in the age of technology. We're now in the age of integration, and we're now in the age of anything goes. But it ain't going for us. It ain't going for the black community. It is not moving in the direction that it should. When I look at other communities and the prosperity and the community and the movement and the assertion, I'm looking back at us going, what's up with that? How come we ain't? Why are we stopped? And when I hear young people walk around here saying, the white man won't let, he ain't gave me, I can't because the white man said I can't. The white man don't know you're here. So how did he say you can't? When did that happen? He didn't even know you're here. You're no longer a threat. You are simply purely existing. You're not.
One of the things I think happened was that we stopped embracing education.
We did.
Collette, if you recall, in the 60s and 70s, there was a great increase in the number of blacks allowed into colleges and universities. And there was a lot of, during the 70s, during the black movement, there was a lot of protests and things like that going on with the Panthers, with the black Muslims. A lot of these things were going on college campuses. And somehow between then and now, we've stopped embracing education. And I'm not in education, but I do see, and I speak to Collette all the time about this, about our kids not seeing. And I think, let me say this. I think the difference in our community is that our kids don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think kids of other ethnicities see that when they graduate college, they can get a good job and do something with their lives. Our children aren't seeing that. They don't see the reason to do that. And that's on us. We have got to teach them better. We have got to teach them that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Education is what's best. Education can get you ahead in life. But again, there are going to be obstacles, but you have to just work through those. But education is the key. It's the key to our success. We need to embrace education on a full-time basis. We need to expect our kids to go to and graduate college. We need to expect our kids to do better. And that's
it. That's it right there, because in my school, I'm at a place where, as I said just the other day, our expectations are very low. We do things in a very mediocre fashion, if you will. We expect our kids to face. We expect them to do what they do. And when they do what they do, we get up in arms and wonder why. But the expectation, the bar is so low that here and in other inner city schools, an A ain't really an A. And the Hispanic community values education. When I hear and kids coming into the exit interviews talking about how much they value their education and what their parents have done and where they're going, and when the question is asked, who's been the most influential in your life, and they say, my dad and my mom, because they value education and they want me to do well, and I'm doing well because I'm going to do this. My parents came here and they're still illegal, but I have an opportunity to go to college. I have an opportunity. It's amazing when I hear kids set a goal that says, I'm going to graduate from high school. Graduating from high school is automatic. Graduating from high school is as automatic as going to high school. It's what you do. It should not be something that is so different. It cannot be that I've got to graduate. And the reason that they have that feeling is simply because from whence they came, nobody graduates from high school. They sit around, they smoke, they do what they do, and graduating from high school is not that important. They want to get a job. I got to get a job. Get a job to do what? I don't know. I don't know, whatever. But get a job. So this is about changing the mindset. This is not only about changing the mindset. We need a complete metamorphosis. So education has to be the key. And we cannot forget that we do have brilliant people within the black community. There's no question about that. We do have brilliant people. So all of those things have to come together. Intellect, the academic intelligence, the emotional intelligence, all of those things have to connect. There must be a balance. There must be. We know what happens when there is no balance. But now we're at a point where we've got to catch up. We've got to catch up. And this is crucial. These are critical times. And we've got to do triple time in order to catch up.
Collette, you mentioned a metamorphosis, and I would use the term a new black consciousness. We need a new black consciousness within our community. We need to wake up.
We need to wake up.
For years I heard people talking about there are no good role models in the black community. That is BS. That is completely untrue. We bought into
And if you don't know what BS is, that stands for bullshit.
You threw me there for a second.
It's bullshit. We do have.
We are looking for role models in the athletes and the entertainers.
And those are not the role models. Those are not the role models. And I realize that this is the what's it called? And we'll hear back from this. The championship, the basketball championship, and those are role models. No, they're not. Those are
1 in a million. The guy who was able to come out of the ghetto and get out of high school and go to college. Maybe he started at a community college and was able to transfer to a 4-year, whether it's a state college or a university. He graduated and he's working for the IBMs or the Wells Fargos or the Bank of Americas. He's working for a large corporation. He is a role model. He's grown up. He is a good husband and father. Those are the role models, and those are who we need to put up in our community as a role model to our kids. Don't just
embrace
look for the people. Don't
those
look for the people on TV.
Exactly. Those are the examples. Those are the examples. Those are the role models. Because remember, you take any basketball team, any football team, you got a handful of people who are actually going to be chosen for basketball. Handful of people who are actually going to go to the NFL, the NBA, all of those sports teams. But you have hundreds of thousands of doctors, hundreds of thousands of engineers, hundreds of thousands of lawyers. So the chances of any one boy coming out of any one school, community, they're nil to none. They're nil to none. When recruiters go out, they're not picking an entire class. They're looking for one good one. They're looking for one good one. And it might take them an entire year to come up with one good one. So when a boy says to me, I don't need to read, I got skills. Really?
The same thing goes for music. I'm a musician, been a musician all my life, but I'm not a full-time musician because after a while I find out it didn't pay the bills. And I did very well for a while. And I know some incredible musicians. And one of the things I like to say is that some of the best people, some of the most talented musicians are not the ones you hear on the radio and out there.
Right.
They just haven't gotten that break. So if these kids are looking for a break, and my son's a musician as well, and he was looking for his break. Sometimes it's just luck. Sometimes it's being in the right place at the right time. But it is a long shot. So life,
it's a long, long shot. Yeah.
Life is about choices, and we need to teach our children, how to make those choices, and that there are other avenues. As you look at television, I watch a lot of. And
it's also about reality. Reality. Be real.
I look at the news a lot, whether it's CNN or MSNBC, and I look at people like the black pundits on there, whether it's Michael Steele, who used to be the chair of the Republican Party, whether it's Christian Walker, who's on one of the stations, whether it's Melissa Harris Perry, who just left MSNBC, Joy Reid, who's still on MSNBC, Don Lemon, who is on CNN. I could go give you a litany of black people, journalists on television who are doing extremely well, have their own programs. They have broken a lot of the glass ceilings to get to where they are. And I guarantee you they did not get there without troubles, without obstacles, without being passed over a time or two, or without somebody saying you need to do this or that. Those things happen. And let me also say this for our community. The United States of America does not have a stronghold on discrimination or racism or prejudice or bigotry.
Right.
If you look at Iran, what's going on in Iran, you've got the Sunnis and the Shiites, the Peshmergas. They're all Iranian and they're all of the same color and they're all Muslims, but there's different sects within there. If you look back at the 60s and 70s in Europe when the Irish were getting in boats and going across the English Channel and blowing up places in England, with from the Irish Republican Army. If you look at back in the 90s during the Eastern European conflict, Bosnia, Herzegovina, ethnic cleansing. I used to think ethnic cleansing, they're all the same ethnicity. So it's everywhere. So the kids who think they've got it hard need to look at the entire world and see,
Absolutely.
You know what, maybe it's not so bad. That is not to minimize the issues we have in our community. But if you look at them in perspective, you can see that, let's, for example, take Chicago, the shootings that happen every week, and that's devastating. But hey, look what's going on in Israel and Palestine.
Right.
Where there's not only shootings, there's bombings, and there's no recourse. So start looking at things in perspective. It's relative. you know.
And the bigger picture. Look at Malala. She was shot 9 times at point blank range. 9
because
times.
She wanted to be educated.
Because she wanted education. She wanted to be educated. And she was fighting for the rights of all girls in that region. And they boarded a bus. They got on the bus. The girls were going from one school to another. The Taliban got on the bus. They said, "Who is Malala?" And everyone put their head down. All of the girls put their head down. And she kept her head up. She didn't utter a sound, and they shot her 9 times at point blank range. And to hear her story, to hear that story, and to read that book, and to listen to the doctors who did everything they possibly could to save her life. And they saved her life. They saved her life. She is the youngest female, the youngest person to ever receive the Nobel Peace Prize at 17 years old. And we complain here. What are we complaining about?
Boko Haram, the girls in Boko Haram, they kidnapped how many? 200 girls?
Yes.
Yeah. And these
in
things
other
are
countries.
happening in other countries and around the world. Again, and this is not to minimize the things that we go through, but if you look at them in perspective with what other people are going through, you know, our difficulties pale in comparison to what other people have.
And the other thing that we could look at is that these things are happening to people of color. They're happening to people of color. They're in other countries, but they're happening to people of color.
But many of them are done by people of that same color.
Right.
Okay, Boko Haram is African as well as the girls. The Mideasterners, I'm not sure what the folks who shot Malala were, but they're all, you know, from that
people of color
region. They're all from that region.
Color.
You know, if you look at Australia, what the Aborigines have been through down there in terms of the discrimination. If you look at Brazil, same sort of thing. The darker-skinned Brazilians are held to a different standard than the lighter-skinned Brazilians.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the whole point being these things are out there, and we need to begin talking about ourselves and how we begin to resolve some of our issues. And instead of, you know, talking about them again is paramount in making sure we understand what's going on. But it's also important that we talk about solutions. How do we resolve this issue? How do we tell our kids, okay, listen, yeah, you're going to have some issues out there. There's going to be some obstacles, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. Look at such and such. Again, look at, you know, change our role models. Our role models do not have to be usually Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. You know, Michael Jordan, his kids are out paying $200, $300, $400 for a pair of Michael Jordan shoes.
Oh my God!
You know, for what?
For what? They can, just like they did. Carty said, can't read, but you're going to spend $200 on a pair of shoes. And a student came in last week and showed me a pair of tennis shoes that he paid $200 for, and showed me online that those shoes are as high as $2,700. And I want to say those are Michael Jordan, somebody like that, Michael Jordan shoes. I think that is appalling. And I think those basketball players and football players who put their name on shoes, and then the shoes are marketed in these communities, and kids are killing each other over these shoes. They can't read, but they can find a way to get these shoes, or they have a parent who's a numbskull and they'll go out and buy the shoes. Really, I think that is a travesty, and I think all of the players, and I'm sure there will be backlash for me saying it, but I think that is appalling. And I know everybody's got to make money somehow. Everybody's got to make money. Everybody has the right to live. Time for a station break.
We will be right back.
You're listening to Change Matters Solutions on Black Talk Radio, hosted by Kenny Hendrix and Collette Williams.
Yes, I am Kenny Hendrix.
And I'm Collette Williams, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking this ride with us.
This is Change Matters. If you'd like to contact us, you can contact us at changematters99@gmail.com.
And we're going to continue the talk, the discussion on the solutions, on things that matter most in the Black community, things that matter in society as a whole, those things being politics, education, family, community, relationships. That's a hot topic. So let's take it away, Ken. Go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to go ahead and bring up into continuing with our discussion is, and I know there are going to be a lot of people out in the community who disagreed with me and probably very vehemently about this, but it has to be said. A few years ago when Dr. Bill Cosby came out in public and said, we need to clean up our house. He talked about our young people walking around with the pants hanging down, with their underwear showing. He talked about
every day.
The rate of unwed pregnancies, single mothers out there. He talked about a lot of different things, and a lot of the community came after him with both feet. One, they didn't like what he was saying, and others said he shouldn't have aired our dirty laundry. Well, here we are on Black Talk Radio, so I'm assuming the majority of this audience is going to be black, so I'm not going to consider this airing our dirty laundry. This is a come to Jesus talk within our community about how our kids are doing. I've seen a couple of pictures recently that people have sent me. I don't know if these are real or not. One was a young man putting gas in his car. He had his pants hanging down. He didn't even have any underwear on. He was just his backside was completely exposed. There was another shot someone sent me of a guy at an ATM. His pants were somewhere down by his knees. There was another one who had his pants down like that, and I don't mean to get graphic here, but someone didn't teach him how to clean himself after using the bathroom. This, and these kids today say, why should it matter how I look when I do X, Y, and Z? Well, looks do matter. People do judge you how you look. Whether you like it or not, it is the reality of the situation. When you walk into a place, you walk into a convenience store and your pants are hanging down, you've got on, some basketball jersey, your hat turned sideways, gold teeth, grabbing your crotch. You may be a student at Harvard. But people are not going to judge you that way because they're going to judge you by what they see out in the public sphere. And this is what they see, the negative images that come out about ourselves. And this just perpetuates negative images.
Exactly. And a student at Harvard would not even think about dressing that way because that student is going to focus on education. That student is usually going to focus on those things that matter most, and not falling in line with whatever the fad is. And one of the things that we talk about, that I talk about daily, is character. I am a character educator. And when Martin Luther King said that he wanted to live to see the day that his children would be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Nowadays, we let that's gone. That's out the window. Because we're judged not only by our color, not only by our character or lack thereof, we're also judged by the way we look. By the way we look. And here at school, lots of kids say, you can't judge me, or why does my appearance matter? If I'm here at school, it shouldn't matter. I should be able to come to school looking whichever way I want to look. Really. If education is that important to you, you're going to know what's acceptable and what is unacceptable. You're going to know that your first impression when you walk through that door, you're going to know that that person who is an instructor is going to look at you either sideways or straight up and down. So you're not only going to be judged by your color or the lack of character, you're going to be judged by the way you look. Birds of a feather flock together. If you're not a part of that pants-sagging party, why are you dressed like it? If you don't want to be judged that way, then why, first impression, why do I see that? Why is that the first thing I see?
See, we have choices in life.
We can't get around it. We cannot get around it.
There are certain, for lack of a better way of putting it, there are certain rules in society. And you can choose to follow the rules or not follow the rules. That's completely up to you. As they say, this is a free country. You don't have to follow the rules. But then when things don't go your way, you don't have a lot of room to complain. Okay? Because no matter who you are, I've been in corporate America for 35 years. And in corporate America, they expect a certain way of looking and dressing. Even today, now that when I came up to corporate America, it was suits and ties. It's not so much suits and ties anymore, but there is a minimum standard on how to dress and carry yourself. And it doesn't matter who you are. You know, even white people that come to work cannot come there unkempt, pants hanging down, looking like gangsters and looking all those things. That doesn't work for them either. And no matter where you are, you're following somebody, whether you're a corporate guy or you're a drug dealer. You're following somebody's rules because the drug dealer is going to want you to look a certain way, because if you've got on khakis, some Dockers and golf shoes and a polo shirt, you're not going to sell
Don't draw
drugs.
attention to yourself. That's
you're
right.
not
Don't draw attention
you're not going to sell much crack down in Watts.
Right.
So no matter where you are a product of that environment, and you have to work within the confines of how that environment works. And if you want to succeed, and success is absolutely possible. I was listening to a gentleman, I think his name was Keith Brown, on the station. It might have been one of the Black Talk radio stations. And he changed impossible to I'm possible. And these things are possible. I have reunited with some friends from high school that I went to high school with, people that I hadn't seen for 30 years. And they are doing extremely well. And people who I would have never thought were going to be successful are very successful now because they've figured out a way to get it done. I know doctors, I know attorneys, I know entertainers, people who have done things, photographers, journalists. It's out there. It can be done, but you have to be willing to put in the work, and you have to be willing to go by some rules.
And you have to be willing, right? And you also have to be willing to shift the paradigm. You have to be willing to change things, because nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same. So opening that mind, opening the heart, being open to new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. And that's what this program is all about. New ways of doing things, new ways of asserting, so that we come up with solutions, so that we have a way to make things happen. Some of the most mundane things, I was listening to a program the other day, and they were talking about something as mundane, yes, I said mundane, as The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. And this show has been on Channel 7 for, I think, 20 seasons, something like that, 20 seasons.
Wow.
Not one time has a bachelor been black. Not one time. Not one time. Not one time has a bachelorette been black. Not one time. Not been black, not been Asian, not been Hispanic, not Armenian. No, not ever a person of color. There was discussion some time ago about the same thing happening on Dancing with the Stars. And if you ever watch Dancing with the Stars, you know what they do. The stars are always white. They bring on two athletes and a black female so-called celebrity. And black folks especially, we're supposed to be happy with that. And then you have the Oscars. So we're lacking in so many areas. And when I hear and I see things like what's going on in education, what's going on in our community, we are so far behind. And I'm sure we're going to hear from all of you out there, because there are tons of people who will dispute that. Everybody's got a fact and a figure. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got their way of thinking. But are we moving forward with our variety, our garden variety of opinions and facts and figures? Are we moving forward? I mentioned to someone some time ago that we were, in the black community, we were on the decline. We were committing that self-imposed genocide. And the debate began. That's not true. That's not true. Well, here we are a few years later, and I hear those terms, self-imposed genocide. And we've done this to ourselves for so many years. It's undeniable. It's absolutely undeniable. Look around, people. Look around. Look at your television. A lot of you, that's what you're doing right now. You're going back and forth between us and the television. Look at what's going on in front of you. Look at our young people. I'm at a school. Look at what's going on. Is it okay? And before we go on to our next show, we're going to give you food for thought. We're going to ask you to think about some things. Come out of the box and think about things. How would you like to see some things happen? What do you think we can do in the black community to make a change, to create a metamorphosis, or at least semblance of a metamorphosis? How can we make things happen for ourselves so that we are self-reliant? We are determined to do this for ourselves. It becomes our issue.
Collette, that's a good segue into what I wanted to talk about. And, again, we were talking about, this program is about solutions. And this is something that's been on my mind for a few years since Ferguson. Everyone knows, and we don't have to go over exactly what happened in Ferguson. We know the problems, the riots, things like that. Two things I want to mention. There was if you recall, during the riots, there was, I think it was about the second day or third day, they told the people you could not stand in one place, you had to keep moving. You could protest as long as you wanted, but you had to keep moving. And there was a shot, I was watching the news, and they were showing the people walking around, and there was a young man who was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, walking with a toddler kid, had to be about maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. They are protesting Michael Ferguson being shot by police, which totally I'm on board with. He had on a T-shirt that said "Thug Life."
Wow.
Now
really?
Think for a moment about that. You are protesting a young man being brutally murdered by a cop. People in the news media are trying to justify it, saying he was a thug, he did this, he did that, and you're walking around with a T-shirt that says "Thug Life." Let that sink in for a moment and ask yourself, really? In addition to that, one of the things that struck me about Ferguson was that is a community, I think they said is about 30,000 people, if if I'm not mistaken. It's a very small community. 70+% black. At the time of Ferguson, they had never had a black mayor, never had a black police chief. Okay, and of the city council, I think 80 to 90% of the people on the city council were white. We have to be involved in our communities. As long as someone else is running our communities, we have to be involved. And if I'm not mistaken, the gentleman
and why do
who was
we
the
leave
mayor,
it up to other people?
the gentleman who was the mayor of Ferguson had run 3 times unopposed. A white man running 3 times unopposed in a primarily black community. Whose fault is that? That is not that white man's fault. That is not the man's fault. And I'm not trying. This is not a knock on the good people of Ferguson. This is saying this is our community. You know, this is what we do in our communities. We
leave it up to someone else.
And at the end of the day, we leave it up to someone else. Our parents need to be at the PTA meetings. We need to be involved. We need to run our own communities. You know, we have to stop waiting on permission. And you will hear me say this on this program over and over and over again. Stop waiting on permission. No one told the people of Ferguson they couldn't put somebody up for mayor. Somebody needs to stand up and say, I'm going to do it. And that's across the board. And that, again, and I'm sure that there are other communities like that in this country as well. Again, this is not a knock on the good people of Ferguson. This is just talking about how do we get past these things. One more thing I'd like to say about that is that when you have a small community like Ferguson and there are issues between the police and the residents of the community, the citizens of the community, the one way to handle that is have a sit down. And someone may call in and say, I'm completely wrong, they've done it. But the good people of the community need to sit down and say, with the city council and the police, in a very professional way, and say, listen, we don't like this is the way it's happening, but you must be willing to negotiate as well. You can't say, just stop, tell the police stop doing that. You have to bring something to the table. So in other words, we are going to make sure our children, our young people, are doing right. We all know what doing right is. I don't have to explain that. Then the police have to do what they have to do. But you can't just say, I saw a sign, somebody carrying a sign. It wasn't in Ferguson. It might have been in Baltimore. That said, stop shooting us. Really? Do you think the police are going to stop shooting you because you have a sign that says stop shooting us?
Stop shooting us.
We have to take responsibility for what's going on in our communities. And that's not laying the blame. It's not laying 100%
No, it isn't.
But think about it. What incentive do they have for not shooting you? They're shooting us and getting away with it. If you look at Walter Scott in Carolina, shot 8 times in the back by the cops. And people talk about training. That's not training. There's something in that man's mind, that cop's mind, that said it's okay to shoot a black man running away. It's okay to shoot him 8 times in the back because I'm going to get away with it.
Right. And the other part is that I think it's the same guy, but the same guy. This is the guy who was running away, and they turned around and said, well, he was either late on his child support. What did that have to do with him being shot 8 times in the back? That had nothing to do with him being shot. He was late on his child support. Really? What did that have to do? The cop did not know that when he shot him. So what did that have to do with him being shot? The young man in New York who all of those officers wrestled him to the ground and they put the chokehold on him. And all of these things take place, and once they happen, then there's a background check on the individual, on the victim, and they come up with these flagrant excuses and say, well, this person had child support payments that were not met, or this guy had a record, or they don't know these things sometimes before they get in an altercation. And the idea is that we don't go there. We don't go there. We do whatever it takes not to go there. And as Ken said, what do we do in our communities? When we look at all of the riots that have taken place this year alone, last year and this year, when we look at Ferguson, when we look at all of the communities that have gone up in smoke, since that, for the last few months, we haven't heard anything. We have not heard anything that's been going on in the community. I remember watching Sweetie Pie in Missouri, and they were talking about Ferguson. And everybody was very, very upset about the things that were taking place in Ferguson. Well, since the burning stopped, the rioting stopped, the looting stopped, we're not talking about that anymore. And the very same thing happened here in Los Angeles. When the riot took place in 1992, the burning took place, the looting took place, the rioting took place, all those things took place. Well, soon thereafter, Rebuild LA came in. Rebuild LA came in and decided that major corporations were going to come in. They were going to begin to disseminate money. They were going to create jobs. They were going to put lots of things in place. I happen to be one of those people who was offered an opportunity as a result of what Rebuild LA was doing. That lasted a hot minute. Nothing has happened. LA has not been rebuilt. LA has not been rebuilt. There were people that will say, well, the Crenshaw area is getting a rail. You know what? You couldn't put a rail down Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. You couldn't put a rail down, what's the name, Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. You couldn't put a rail down Ventura Boulevard, but there is a rail going down Crenshaw Boulevard, and you talk about the disruption? Really? Really? So that has nothing to do with Rebuild LA. That has nothing to do with the black community and making sure that things are straight up, making sure that things and people of the community are prosperous. They've closed businesses, they've closed buildings, all kinds of things have happened. And here, as I call it on the plantation, it's, how do they say, whatever. It is what it is.
And it's about ownership. You know, unfortunately, we own very little in our own communities. And
very little, if anything at all.
That's another thing that is paramount to our success. We have to have, because you can't have pride in something that you don't own. And I remember as a young man, I was working at this particular place, and there was a white girl working there, and she decided she was moving to Palm Springs. And I said, well, who do you know in Palm Springs? And she said, nobody. I just want to move to Palm Springs. And I thought about that. I said, wow, it never dawned on me that I could live somewhere else except where I was. I didn't know how to think out of the box. Okay, and then I began to expand.
And that's where we are. That's right. Can't do that here. Can't do that. That's right.
We are so stuck in the way we are thinking, the way we've thought for many, many, many years. We have to change the way we think about the things. That's why I call it a new black consciousness, because we have to change the way we think about things. We have to change the way we see ourselves. We have to respect ourselves. We have to respect our women. We have to respect our elders. We have to respect our children. I was listening to some Gil Scott the other day. Gil Scott was one of my heroes coming up, one of his last albums, and he says some very profound things in there, talking to these young rappers about the things that they're rapping about. You know, and I know we don't have time to get into that, but on one of the next shows we'll be talking about rap and hip-hop and how it has affected the community. But we need to have respect. And what I try to tell young people, walking around with your underwear showing, with your pants hanging off like that, shows that you have no respect for yourself. So how can you expect other people to have respect for you? And there was one other thing that I wanted to say during Ferguson. I was watching MSNBC, and they had a young man on there who I think he was one of the probably first leaders, if you will, of what became the Black Lives Matter movement. I think this was before that. But at any rate, he was being interviewed on MSNBC, and he had on a basketball jersey with no shirt. And I sat there watching and I said, and, you know, some people may disagree with me and call me crazy, old, conservative, whatever you want to call me. But he didn't have the decency to put on a shirt to go on primetime television. And you expect people to take you seriously? You got on a basketball jersey with no shirt on underneath.
And don't forget about the basketball player. And I don't remember.
So we have to understand that how we look.
Right. Right.
And it affects us even more than it affects other communities.
That's right.
They expect us to be negative. They expect us to do bad things. They expect us to be criminals and not know how to dress and not know how to speak and all these things. They expect those things from us. And many of us fall right into that trap and do exactly that. You know, it's a damn shame that just having a hoodie on is a crime now.
Right, and the boy gets shot. And I'm at a school where boys wear hoodies all the time, but they don't want to be looked at as hood rats or thugs. They don't want to be looked at that way. But when you walk into an area and you appear that way, the first thing that someone sees is a thug, a hood rat, simply because of the appearance. Simply because of the appearance. And don't forget, Ken, that basketball player who was at the White House, and I believe it was the Lakers, I could be wrong, and most of them were in suits, and one or two were in just basketball shorts. Well, they called them out to receive the award and shake the president's hand. He didn't want to come out from behind the others because he was dressed inappropriately. That was embarrassing.
Yeah,
that was embarrassing.
What made him think that was an appropriate way to go to the White House? So that's that thought
Folks,
process. That's that we need to begin to develop a new black consciousness about who we are. Because until we change and we begin to love ourselves and respect ourselves as a people, you know, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to be doing the same things. We have to change the way we act, to change the way we eat. We can't continue to eat like slaves and expect to change a slave mentality, you know, continuing to eat bad foods, you know, the chitlins and the hog maws and all the things that you know, that we had to eat 100 years ago. Why would we continue to eat? Why would we continue
the same thing? Why?
We have diabetes is rampant in our community because of the way we eat. People are overweight because of the way we eat. We don't exercise. We need to change a lot of that. And a lot of this, and I'm going to admit, a lot of what we have to say on this program is not going to sit well with a lot of people, but that's okay. You know, it has to be
That's
said.
what we want. Absolutely.
You know?
It has to be said. And that's why change matters. We have to spread the word. We have to say the things that are uncomfortable. We're here to create discomfort. We want to make you uncomfortable. Because once you become uncomfortable, you'll begin to think about how you can become comfortable. You will begin to think about how you can make changes for yourself in your community, in your home, in your families, so that you can and will become comfortable. Because right now, we're all experiencing a great deal of discomfort nationwide. So we're talking about becoming comfortable, a paradigm shift, a consciousness change. We've got to do it. We've got to do it, people. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. And change matters. And it matters a great deal. I think we've run out of time. We've got a couple of minutes
left. We'd just like to say, anyone that's listening, thank you very much for listening. Again, I am Kenny Hendrix.
And I am Collette Williams.
And we will be doing podcasts moving forward. We hope you enjoy the program. Again, the email address is changematters99@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think. If you've got ideas for solutions, if you've got ideas for topics on the program, we'd love to hear from you. Yes. Listen in and keep listening. We will be launching very soon, going live
We will do talk back. So continue to listen. Continue to listen to the dialogue and become a part of the solution. So thank you very much. We really, really appreciate your patronage. Thank you.
Remember, change matters.
Change matters.